first bit fat, and then it slows down. Then you stop. Yeah, and you're like, come on, really go slow. Yeah.
Oh.
Although slow is better because it stays on. You lose it too fast, it just. And of course you want to
Good morning.
treat yourself if you're doing so well.
And you're gaining
weight.
Yeah. Muscle is denser, right? So it takes up, so it seems heavier because the more of it ends up being heavier. Right, right. It's all mass. So, yeah. But yeah, it's denser, so it takes up less space, right? So then it comes across as heavier. Yeah.
I really noticed it.
Yeah, good. Mm-hmm. From doing everything. Yeah.
Can I come to your
Okay.
house and make cupcakes for my birthday and then use 4 or 5 No, you cannot do that. Oh, then
Yeah.
my wife.
Okay. We're gonna get started. It's 8:01 now. Good morning. Welcome, class. Yes. So, how? I mean, everyone got checked. Did you guys all check in? Let's make sure we check in for the quick cut. There's one here. There's one over there. You guys know that. Oh no, it's good. We just realized we don't ever tell you to check in for this one.
I heard you, so that's why I checked.
Yeah, there you go. Cool. And how did this week go? I think we talked to everybody individually, but fair. Okay. Okay. The happy's good. We like happy. Well, these are the things we always want to like take a look back at, right? Well, one, did you get your scan? But did you hit your protein? Right? Are we doing okay making those goals and working towards that? Did we get our full number of workouts? That means 5 to 6, right? How are we doing with sleep? How's our off plan? Right. We talked about that. Yes. How are we doing with off plan? And then if we're hungry, right? We really shouldn't be hungry during these when we're on the quick cut. You should be eating plenty of all that good stuff. Great. Good. Right, right.
And all of that protein, like
Mm-hmm.
can't eat anymore.
Yeah, that's where get the protein first, and then fill it up with the other grams. Exactly. But yeah, like that was the big thing with this is we don't want you to be hungry. Everyone always talks about diets, which we'll talk about, and how they're hungry because they're missing things. But in here, it's like eat as much as you want. So, yeah, exactly.
How do you lose weight when you're full like that, though?
Because we're eating.
Always so full.
Well, you're eating all those nutrient dense things, right? All the fruits, the vegetables. So it's taking up all that space in there, but they're all really low calorie, right? So, yeah. Okay, so for today, we're talking outside the box, right? So we talk about, when we talk about the quick cut, we talk about eating in the box, right? That box of meat, vegetables, nuts, seeds, fruits, vegetables. No, yes, no sugar. That right there. Exactly. So we're going to talk about outside of the quick cut, right? What other things are out there, why we should know about them. Just explain some of them, and that way when you're talking to somebody else about what you're doing, you can know where they're coming from as well, right? And have an educated conversation on that, understand why what they're doing is working for them, why what you're doing is working for you, and that back and forth, right? So big part of it, like I said, why? If the quick cut's working for you, why should I know about all these other things? It's mostly when we have informed decision making, right? Know what's out there, have some knowledge, know what's changing in different diets and how that is leading to effects for everybody. Also, like I said, understanding others' arguments. And then we've got that personalization. In the world, right, in life, one thing doesn't work for everybody. We can all agree on that, right? And so that's why we have so many different options. There is no right or wrong. It's, does it get me results, and can I do it, and is it effective, right? So that's what, looking at some of the other options, it's not like it's right or wrong. It's just, this is one way to the same path of losing weight and feeling healthy. Okay. So one thing to like make clear from the beginning, when we're looking at any different diet, all diets are just manipulating different macronutrients in our food, right? And they all then end up in decreased calories, and that's what leads to weight loss. Okay. Do you guys know what macronutrients are?
No, I've heard of them, but I'm not.
Okay. So technically you are manipulating your macronutrients on the quick cut, right? Macronutrients are protein, fats, and carbs. So macronutrients, when we say that, it's just talking about what makes up our food. And that's why if you've ever tracked your food, you're technically tracking macronutrients. But it's just those 3 parts of food that get shifted around in different diets. Does that make sense? Right? So whether, and I was looking at, we'll get into some of this, but there's a lot of claims in different diets where it's, oh, we're doing this and we're getting this result and it's resulting in weight loss. But ultimately it's just, we're changing this macronutrient, right? We're changing the amount of protein we're getting. We're changing the amount of carbs we're getting. And therefore we get less calories and we lose weight. Anytime we have less calories than we are having before, we're going to lose weight. Can we all agree on that? Yeah, we got it? Cool. And then what I want you to think about as we go through all these different things is for yourself and for just assessing different types of eating patterns. Is it sustainable? Is it effective? And is it actually leading to health, right? Because you could eat nothing and you'd lose weight, but is that sustainable? Yeah, it's effective, but it's not very sustainable. It's not leading to health ultimately, right? Not long-term health. So I want you to kind of keep that in mind. There's little reminders throughout here, but those are the things as we're looking at these different eating patterns. What does that really look like in life? Okay. So, and I guess the other question is, have any of you guys tried, and like, what have you tried before? We've got keto, we got carnivore, we got Whole30, we've got paleo, like tried them all. Keto.
Is that the fat one?
Yeah, that's the fat one. Yeah, okay. Optivia, right. Cool.
Shake diet.
Okay.
Diet.
Yeah.
We've
tried a whole bunch of them, right? And so, and that's where, like, if we've tried a whole bunch of them, then we were probably missing some of this part, right? Sustainable. So that's, yeah, and that's what we want to make sure we're finding as we're finding. And it's, rather than calling it a diet, I like to call it an eating pattern, right? Or your style of living, right? Okay. So, and this is where we kind of get into those macronutrients, right? There is, and this is something we previously did in the gym, we still do at times for people, is just macro counting, right? Macronutrient counting. So taking and tracking all your food so you know exactly how many proteins, how many carbs, and how many fats you get. This is one way, and you can basically you find your overall ratio and you eat that many calories and there's your results. It's certainly effective, right? Once you get that right amount of balance in there. It's flexible because in that pattern of eating, you can eat anything that fits into those macros, right? And you can adjust it based on your goals, right? If somebody says, okay, I am much happier with more fat, well, you change more fat, you get your protein, and everything is flexible in there, okay? The downsides of that requires weighing and tracking, right? You have to know how much of every little thing is getting in there. And then it's only as healthy as you actually make it. Right? Like I said, there's something called dirty macros where people essentially, you can have Oreos and you can have whatever fits into that, right? Eat what fits. And well, are we going to be building health in that case? No, not likely, right? So that's one that, it's a lot of flexibility in that. It's also a lot of tracking and understanding exactly what you're putting in your body. And it can be sustainable, right? As long as you're okay tracking forever. It certainly can be effective. Does it build health? It depends on how you do it, right?
Depends on that yellow category and what you put in.
Right, exactly. And also making sure you have a calorie goal that actually is going to end up in weight loss. Okay. Questions on macro counting, right? And that may be something if you've tracked on MyFitnessPal and you came and showed us and we're like, oh, you need more protein, you need less calories. That's what we're looking at in that sense. Okay. And then we've got our Mediterranean diet. Everyone's heard of Mediterranean diet, I feel like, right? Mediterranean diet is, so like we talked about, adjusting macronutrients, right? Ultimately, we're adjusting pretty much all the macronutrients. We're taking out a lot of those processed foods, or all the processed foods, I should say. And so that ends up decreasing just how much we're actually eating, right? If we're not having the really expensive foods, right, the really high calorie foods, we're adjusting those macronutrients down. And I put it out here, but it is a lot of plant focused and a lot of healthy fats and then some moderate protein. And there's some flexibility, but mostly it's not processed foods. It's kind of the basis of it, right? The pros, unprocessed food. Right? We know processed food ends up leading to visceral fat, our conversation earlier, but it also just leads to more calories, right? In foods that are like, we want to go back and we almost have that like food addiction for, right? That's those processed foods, it gets rid of those, right? And so we don't tend to have those cravings and those things. The other pro is there's no calorie counting. It's, hey, eat within this category and you will see results, right? The cons, for a lot of people, grains can be a problem, right? They do include grains in our Mediterranean diet, and if people have insulin resistance or they have issues with sugars, grains are really going to impede their progress, and they're really easy to overeat for most people too. Alcohol is often included in this diet. Wine is like allowed, right? So that's another one. We know wine isn't, and alcohol is not good for us, right? Not leading us towards health. So a little problematic with that. And then some people, it's supposed to lead to a calorie deficit because of the fact that we're just getting rid of all those high calorie foods. But some people certainly can do it, right? If you eat enough of those grains and enough of everything in these categories, right, in our fats, it still doesn't always lead to a calorie deficit. So we may not necessarily see weight loss, right? Yeah, we may have healthier labs and we may have healthier other things, but if we're looking for weight loss, it can be harder for that. Okay. Any questions on our Mediterranean diet? No? Okay. Has anyone, you guys all said you've tried it. A good amount of you said you've tried it before. Was it a sustainability thing? Was it that you stopped, or was it a I'm not getting results thing? Or what was your thought?
It's one of the very few days I actually haven't tried this.
Yeah, that's not.
Okay.
I haven't tried that
Okay.
one either.
Yeah.
I tried it. I didn't get the results that I wanted.
Okay, yeah. So, and that kind of goes us back to here, right? And then we've got our Whole30 and Paleo, right? So these ones are very similar. And both of them are, like it says, very similar. The Whole30 is based on a 30-day reset, right? Whereas our Paleo the purpose is to be long-term, right? And both of them are ultimately removing a whole bunch of stuff, right? Especially those processed foods. You can see here, though, we've got all our allowed meats and veggies, cuts out all sugars. Paleo does have some natural sweeteners that are allowed, I guess you'd say, right? Grains on either one are out of the picture. Beans and lentils and legumes, all of those are not in either of those plans, right? And then dairy, none allowed here. You get mostly excluded on the other side. And then alcohol, sometimes moderate alcohol, and then no alcohol. And then treats, right? Those are those ones that are like, well, they're paleo because it includes these things and doesn't include these, but they're still treats, right? Right, and that's where we come back to kind of that same thing. The couple things on here, right? Same thing, where basically a lot of this we're cutting back on those carbs as our macronutrient that we're manipulating, right? And so that ends up leading to our less calories. And like I said, Whole30 is 30 days of like really strict and then coming off of that. So the question there is, are we getting sustainable results, or is it just, hey, I'm going to do this for 30 days and then I'll go back to my old habits, right? A lot of times we end up with that yo-yo dieting with this, right? Somebody's, okay, I lost this much in 30 days, then I get loose and do whatever I want, and then, oh, I need to do my whole 30 again, right? It's this back and forth process. And so we can go back and look, right? Sustainability, this may be sustainable for a lot of people. It's just a matter of what your lifestyle looks like. Like not having the legumes can be a problem for some. Not having dairy is another big issue there. But is it effective? Yeah, generally we see that being effective. It's kind of more reliable on this, reliant on the sustainability. And then does it build health? Yeah, I would say so. Would you guys agree? Right? There's nothing there that's problematic. It would just be, is it too restrictive for you? Right, paleo treats and then the alcohol over there, right? And then we've got keto, right? Keto is pumping up the fat, right? That's the big part of that. So we get really high fat, we get moderate protein, and then low carb. With that, when the whole concept behind it is we get the carbs low enough so that instead of burning carbs, we're burning fat, right? And so that results in weight loss. So as far as pros, when we have a lot of fat makes us full. So that keeps us full the whole time, right? Satiety, people, that's where they mix the keto with the intermittent fasting, that type of thing. So we stay full pretty often. We don't have issues with hunger. And then it stabilizes blood sugar, right? So if somebody has really bad blood sugars, oftentimes you'll hear, oh, we went on the keto diet to help with those blood sugar fluctuations, because we got rid of almost all the carbs there, and carbs end up with that sugar. So there are certainly some pros, really good pros there, right? We can see health getting better. We can see the weight loss. It often results in really quick weight loss because we lose a lot of water weight in the very beginning too. Okay. As far as the downsides, right? It's restrictive, right? We basically are cutting out a whole category of food. The carbohydrates are out of there. Less fiber, and then the low fruits and vegetables. And the biggest, you said you were on it before, Karen, right?
Yes.
Yes. And what was the biggest issue for you?
I loved having all the fat.
You loved having the fat.
I loved it
So,
at first. And
okay.
I thought, this can't be good for cholesterol. This can't be good for my health. And like I said, I loved it at first. Like, eat all that stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, this is not going good. So
Right.
then I just stopped.
Okay. Yeah.
Slap somebody for an apple.
Right. Right.
That's what I
Those
meant.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
the thing about keto is once you're in that fat burn stage, if you have just a little bit of sugar, if you have just a bite of something, you're like 3 or 4 days on the struggle bus.
Right. So this brings up one thing is when you first get on it, there's something called a keto flu, right? It's because your body's basically, you don't have carbs anymore. So your body was running on carbs and it's saying, we're done with those. So we get this really crappy feeling. And so oftentimes when you've been in that keto state and then you introduce some sugar or some carbs, we start that process back over, right? So one of the things that you guys both touched on, right, is our sustainability. We get those really big results right up front, and then we start to introduce the carbs, and it's like, okay, well now I can't do both. I can't be keto and have carbs, and so we end up back to where we started, right?
My body, at least, just was like, I've got food.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that came on. In fact, the quick start,
Quick cut?
No. I just said it. This is the other thing that sucks about getting old. Optavia.
Oh,
It's
okay.
very much keto.
It goes towards keto, yeah.
And I lost a lot of body fat.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I gained the weight back, it all came back in excess body fat.
Okay, yeah.
And it came on.
So you kind of you swung the other direction. Yeah. So, yeah, so ultimately keto serves a purpose, right? As all these things do. And the question is, how do we sustain that? Or what do we do after keto if that's something you're using that purpose for? And figuring out that piece of this puzzle, right? Some people, they live on keto and that works for them. Other people, most people that I talk to have a really big challenge with the sustainability. And then, like you mentioned, Karen, a lot of times we do see cholesterol jumping up with that. And so that's something to keep into account. Some people it happens way more than other people. And that's just because of all those high fats. Okay. The other thing with keto is it's like you can do healthy keto, right, where we're getting healthy fats. You can also do unhealthy keto, right, where people are like, oh, I had, nacho cheese on top of a hot dog on top, like all the unhealthy fats get in there. Yeah, I know, right? So, or they have keto snacks, right? And then those things are loaded with all these extra things. And yes, fat bombs are also where like, hey, let's put as much fat into this as we can. And that's ultimately, then we're not building health with it, okay? And then we get into a more extreme version, right? We get carnivore. Yeah, there you go. I know you. Yeah. So I was like, this is it. That's perfect. Yep. So yeah, carnivore, it's all meat, right? Including eggs and fish. Some people will include dairy, sometimes some berries and sometimes some nuts. But mostly it's like, here's meat, all the meat, which then takes our keto macronutrients, right? And says, okay, we're gonna get those carbs even lower. And we're gonna get that fat and that protein up. And so that's what we're doing here. The benefits there is, once again, we come to our sugar conversation, right? And our carb conversation. You're not taking any in any of it, so you get that really stable blood sugars. There can be some issues in the beginning as we transition, kind of like keto, but those blood sugar stability like comes on really quick. We get rapid weight loss. You're full for sure, right? So in all these, I guess I should have said this in the beginning, but I've tried, I think, all these diets at this point. And yeah, at some point, your satiety is like, you're just full. Like, I don't want to eat any more food, right? And obviously that's going to result in a calorie deficit. And then there is a lot of claims for carnivore specifically, like with autoimmune benefits and like very specific conditions. People are like, I feel better on this than I have before. I'm not aware of any like specific research on that, but anecdotally, it's what I've heard quite a bit. So then we get to the other half of the picture is very restrictive, right? We take keto and make it like, hey, let's restrict this even more. There's a lot of issues with limited nutrients. So if we're not taking in fruits and vegetables, we're not like, especially if you're just doing the meat, you're also not getting any dairy, which has good amounts of your micronutrients, your vitamins, everything there. People can get really deficient in things, right? And then start to feel really bad and have issues. So most people, if they're strictly carnivore, are on supplements. Like, they have to be.
We did a carnivore experiment a couple months ago. Yeah,
so like,
it lasted 5 days.
Yeah, it lasted 5 days.
Good
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
We didn't know dairy. We
did nothing.
I was hanging on
Yeah.
my nails.
Yeah.
We got sick.
Right. I got like weird heart palpitations and yeah, it wasn't good. So
We were out camping too, so it was not good.
yeah. So, and we tried it without supplements and without dairy or anything else. And I mean, we did learn like, okay, this can make you really full. I can see like just didn't want to eat, right? We can see why we get a calorie deficit from it. But there is some like, if that was something someone was doing or exploring, they need to go intentionally in making sure they're not having issues with that. And so that then takes us to, are we sustainable? For most people, probably not. Some people, sure, it may be, but I don't think you've talked. I was gonna say you've talked to one person.
Our recent research, and I know one person, and actually 2 people. It's a couple that's doing it together.
Yeah.
And they've been on it for 5 or 6 years. But even the folks who made it a couple years, talk to them, and they're like, nope, don't recommend it, even though they made it like
Right.
a couple years on carnivore.
Yeah.
Because of how it affected their lives and
right.
their mindset.
Is it effective? Yeah, it's effective for weight loss, right? We'll certainly see that. It's effective for blood sugar stability. Does it build health? We can still have that cholesterol issue, right? That's still something that we have to pay attention to. And I don't know that necessarily long-term, there's certainly not a lot of studies long-term for carnivore. As far as like, is that high level of fats going to cause something in the future? We don't know yet. But they certainly feel better on it. So in some people, maybe. It's kind of one of those back to personalizing what works for you, what makes you feel good, and all of that. Okay. And then we got fasting. Right? This one, ultimately, you're restricting all the macronutrients because you're taking your eating window, right, or the time that you eat, and you shrink it down. So some people, they're like, okay, I've seen any variable you can think of, right? Some people I'm gonna skip breakfast and have lunch and dinner. There's also I'm gonna fast for 24 hours once a week, right? Or there's even longer fasts. The intermittent fasting specifically is more of on a regimen, right? I'm gonna skip this meal and eat this part of the day.
That's what I do.
Yeah,
I've been doing it for probably a year and a half.
Yeah.
I'm not a big breakfast person, so it wasn't that hard to do.
Yeah.
So I don't eat past 7 p.m. most times, and I eat at 11:30.
Okay. Yeah. So
it works.
It literally takes our calorie time to eat food and just decreases it.
Yeah.
Right. That's why it works.
For me to get all the protein and all the vegetables.
And that brings up, yes, and that's probably one of the biggest issues I've seen, like in working with patients and certainly with athletes, is if you're, hey, I'm going to eat lunch and dinner, but you need 100 and something grams of protein. That's a lot of food in 2 meals, right? And maybe some snacks in there. So like I see more issues with not getting enough food in that aspect a lot of times. And someone especially who's active and needs the calories, needs the grams of protein, carbs, and everything. It does build some flexibility, right? If you're eating this much and you're eating whatever you want, then we're gonna have less calories typically. And there's no tracking, and we talked about this, the under and the overeating, it can lead to binging as well, right? So if you're like, okay, I'm not eating for this much period of time, and now I got to go crazy on this period of time, it doesn't necessarily lead to healthy choices, right? We can also then overeat in just that tiny period and feel terrible afterwards. So it comes back to sustainability, effective, and does it build health? It can, right? It certainly, and for some people, they have found a lot of benefit in it. Other people, we just have to be looking, are you getting exactly what you need in that time period? Or is it at a deficit for something else?
I have to say, going through all those diets, I like the one we're on.
Good. Yeah, and that's, for the quick cut, that's what we're building, is something that you like, right? Is effective, sustainable, and builds health. Right. So that's a common one too. So like I said, there's no right or wrong, right? It's all just avenues to ultimately decrease the calories that we're taking in, right? And leading to weight loss. And really it's about finding one that's going to be effective. Sustainable is probably the biggest one, and then actually build health. And so as you're having those conversations with people, as you're looking at what you're doing, that's what we want to bring it back to. Cool. Any questions? Okay, great. Awesome. Cool. Let's go work out then.
Yeah.
Right?